Very good. Well, this is unusual. I know you guys are out there. We just can't see you. But we are delighted to have you this evening. My name is Dana Smith, and I'm a member of Zoe Christian Fellowship. And welcome to our town hall this evening, where we are going to be talking about a ton of exciting and informative topics as it relates to our upcoming election. Never, ever, ever in my lifetime do I recall such anticipation coming up towards an election. And we're really excited for the program that we have for you this evening. It's going to be bipartisan. It doesn't matter what your political affiliation is or no political affiliation. One of the most important things we want to leave you with tonight is the importance of voting and being able to shape public policy. It's just critical that we take advantage of that. So what I'm going to do for us soon is do a quick introduction of our panelists who are going to be joining us tonight. And then we'll do a couple of polls. I have a few questions to ask you all. But before we do that, a couple of housekeeping things. If you guys are familiar with Zoom, if you kind of hover down at the bottom of your screen, you should see a button that says chat. There's a bubble above it. You can click on that chat. And if you have any questions that you would like answered at any point during our panel, go ahead and type those into the chat, very similar to what we do on Sunday at church. And so we'll be checking the chat towards the end of our time together, and we'll have a Q&A at that point. So very, very exciting. Again, my name is Dana Smith. I've seen about a dozen of you come in since I first introduced myself. So let me start with, we are going to start our evening with our very own Augustus Stone, who is a contemporary African-American griot. I did not know that term, which is a storyteller. Augustus is going to start us off. If you have never heard Augustus speak, you are in for a treat, because he is an eloquent orator. I love to hear him speak. He has tons of experience giving historical presentations for colleges, universities, schools, community organizations, businesses, and corporations. So thank you, Augustus, for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. After Augustus, we're going to hear from Miss Jean Vasquez. So we're really excited to have Jean with us today. Jean works for the LA County Registrar, Recorder, and County Clerk. So she is in ground zero and understands all the ins and outs of how to register to vote. In fact, a typical day for Jean is hitting the streets and signing people up to vote. She does informational sessions for nonprofit organizations and the community. And so she's going to give us some good details about having the right plan to vote for this upcoming election. So welcome, Jean, and thank you for joining us. You can wave or you can unmute.
Hi, thank you for having me, Dana.
Okay, your feedback there, once you just turn it down, you got it, you know how this goes. And then we're going to hear from our very own Kelvin Driscoll. Kelvin, I'm going to ask you to unmute and give us just a little blurb about yourself, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, Dana, I thought you were going to I was waiting to hear what you were going to say. But I guess at this point, this is like a welcome home. So I'm happy to be joining a great panel tonight. Of course, happy to see the doctor. A little bit about myself. Y'all know I grew up in Zoe. Now my wife and I live in Santa Clarita, where I am currently running for office for city council here in Santa Clarita. So certainly am involved in this political cycle for the second time now as a candidate, and just looking forward to having that bipartisan conversation, because as you noted, no matter what side of the aisle, quote unquote, you're on, it has never been more important to make sure that your voice is heard in every election, in every race, from the top of the ballot to the very bottom of the ballot. So just appreciative for being here tonight. Thank you to the doctor and to my other boss, Dory, for the opportunity to be here tonight. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Kelvin. That's exciting. I had no idea you were running for office. So congratulations for that. That's excellent. And then, of course, our very own Doc Josh will close us out and give us a good word on having peace, I would say, during this very polarizing time. I mean, Doc Joss has been bringing a very hard word on me. You know, it's been like the last 3 Sundays where I've been like, let me close my lips because I need to be reminded that this is a time to have peace and not let myself get all flustered. So we have a wonderful panel in store for you all. We are going to start with just a few poll questions because we just kind of want to see where you guys are in terms of getting together your voting plan. If you're a new voter and you might be voting for the very first time. And then we want to know, is this your first time voting? So Jason, if you wouldn't mind, could you initiate our first poll? So those of you on the Zoom, we've got a question for you. And that question is this your very first time voting, yes or no? So if you guys could all vote for us, we're going to be able to see you tally. We're going to be able to see a tally of those results. I'm going to vote myself. So once you select your option, then you click submit. And we'll give it just a little bit and see if we can tally up those results, kind of help us understand who's in the room. Jason, are you going to be able to throw up the results or are we going to hold on to them?
Yes, I can put them up. We'll see them.
Okay, awesome.
We have 40 out of 44 people who voted. Are you want to see the results now?
I want to see them, yeah. Oh, wow. See, that's telling to me. So we're all experienced voters. Very good. So out of everyone who voted, all of you have voted before. Very good. Our next question. How likely are you to vote in the upcoming election? Certain to vote, most likely to vote, probably won't vote, not sure, or you will not vote. So if you all could select your option and click submit, and this is all anonymous, so we're not capturing a list with your name on it behind the scenes. Just helps us to see who's all in the room this evening. Oh, wow. 100% of you guys are going to vote. Okay, that's fantastic. And then our last question is, do you have a voter plan? There's a variety of different ways to vote this year. I know if you are watching the news, there are a lot of concerns about what is the best way to make sure that your vote is counted. So let us know, do you have a very specific plan on how you will vote, or no, you don't have a plan at all, or you're still thinking about how you're going to do that plan? For me, it's really very easy. I live not too terribly far away from the registrar's office, so I just go directly to the registrar and vote. And don't forget to click submit, and we'll look at those last results there. Okay, so a few of you are still figuring out. Very good. Okay, let's jump right in. So Augustus, I think that's a perfect segue, if you will, to talk to us about the history of voting and why it's so important to vote, particularly in elections such as this.
Okay, be glad to. This is a very scaled down because there's a lot of time and energy and bunch of stuff has happened down through the centuries and thousands of years. So but basically, the system of structured government that we know as democracy was developed over centuries of evolvement from family. I think we have a slide to show, I don't see it, so I'm assuming that it's up there. It went from family to clan, to tribe, to village, to city, city-state, and country or nation. And a lot of this had to do with population growth. So we went to family, to clan, and then tribe, and then to a village, and then a town. And that town, city, city-state, at this point, it began to, population began to expand exponentially. And so that includes all of that. All records, nope, too soon, all records indicate that ancient Egypt created the first government structure, and that it was based upon 7 foundational principles. And those principles were truth, justice, harmony, balance, reciprocity, righteousness, and universal order. And these principles were known as Ma'at, M-A-A-T, okay? Now this took place anywhere but from 2500 BC all the way back to 7500 BC. And it was followed around 1750 BC by King Hammurabi, who took those 7 principles, which by this time had been expanded to 42 laws that were called the negative affirmations. Now, what makes this interesting is that, as you see on the line, you see they have I have not committed, and have not is a kind of a negative connotation. And one of the couple of the sources that I found said that the Pharaoh expected the people that worked for him and handled things in the different provinces and districts of the people, they were required to recite this at the beginning of their day. And at the end of the day, after, as you can see, this says, I have not. Well, that's what they were supposed to say. At the beginning of the day, they were supposed to start off, I will not commit sin, I will not commit robbery, I will not cause harm, etc. And at the end of the day, these public servants had to go through the whole thing. And if they found that somebody they didn't treat right, or even if it was just a mistake, the very next day, the first thing they did was went and rectified that. And so those were 42 laws that the nation instilled, the Pharaoh instilled upon the people. And this went until around 1750 BC, when King Hammurabi took those 42 and created 282 laws. And he was king over a lot of territory, so everybody had to adhere to this. Now, it's interesting to note that during the vast majority of that time, that kingdoms, monarchies, and dictatorships were the most common forms of government structure. And pretty much all of the time, or most of the time, common people, regular folks, kind of like most of us, had little control or say-so about their condition of existence. So around 560 BC is when the Roman Republic is credited with beginning the very first representative government structure. However, it was quite complex and initially consisted of at least 5 people groups. It then expanded and grew to the graphic that you see up there now. It was a lot of things, it was complex. And basically, if you were a peasant or a slave, you didn't have a voice anyway, okay? Now, the other form of government that began to evolve and came a little bit later was the parliamentary structure of Great Britain. Now, it's necessary to point out that none of these above mentioned government structures really included women, unless, of course, they were a queen. Now, representative government came about because of the need and desire and the demand of everyone, and this translates to men, women were not included at this point, to have a say in controlling the quality of their lives once there were too many people, and this is key. The exponential growth of the population on the planet and in different areas reached a point where people could not assemble together collectively in one space to have and address their needs. And although the primary qualification to participate was simply to be a citizen, born or naturalized, initially it still did not include women until after 1920. Now, here's another interesting thing for most of us who are American. We must state that our American democracy owes most of its constitutional structure not to the Roman Republic, but to the Great Peace Agreement of the 7 Iroquois tribal nations of indigenous people on this continent. And this was established, this Great Peace Agreement, over 400 years before the first Europeans arrived on the continent. So our founding fathers somehow got a opportunity to attend one of their gatherings to do the kind of things to take care of all of the tribal nations people. So this is important for us to realize that even from the beginning and even before the beginning, the native and indigenous people had a say-so and had an impact on how our government was formed. Let's move to actual voting. The actual voting evolved from decisions normally would be made by counting the number of hands raised and a vocal confirmation of aye, yay, or nay. And you remember, if you're in small groups, someplace, everybody raised their hand and said, I'll vote for that, or I won't vote, etc. And then it evolved into physical forms such as clay tablets, wooden parcels, and then paper, which eventually led to ballots for each vote. Now, our constitutional democratic system consists of three branches: legislative, and as you can see that, it makes, writes, and creates the laws; the judiciary, which interprets the laws; and the executive, which implements and enforces the laws. And this structure is part of the evolvement all the way back from the ancient time of Africa to now, and it allows more people to be a part of the process. So, and what you see there is duplicated, whether you know it or not, and now you know it because I'm going to tell you, duplicated at the state, county, and city level, okay? Now, the most important document that brought our country and the above system into existence is the Declaration of Independence. And the most important statement in this document begins with, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal," and it ends with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, unfortunately, this is still in the process of being fully implemented on a continuous basis, because the second paragraph of the first article denied the right to fully participate to African Americans and Native or Indigenous Americans. I should include, it also didn't include women either at that point. And this is despite the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments and various Civil Rights Acts, laws, and bills thereafter. Now, it is also important to point out that ours is a participatory democracy, okay? And it's composed of all the people, by all the people, for all the people. That's the way it's supposed to be. This means everyone who is qualified needs to participate. And one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, participatory action to perform is voting. Now, finally, we all, every one of us, should honor the legacy and heritage left by all the people, Black, white, and others, who struggled, fought, and especially who died, working to fulfill the promise contained in that Declaration of Independence. I thank you for your time and attention. Hope I've been helpful.
Thank you so much, Augustus. That was really, really good. So we're at ballots now. We started on clay tablets. Look at where we have come from. So thank you so much for sharing that. So that's actually a really good segue into Jean. And Jean, if you want to unmute, we would love to hear more about what it is that you do, quite frankly, at the registrar's office, and not only the importance of voting, but the methods for voting. Anything you'd like to share with us? You're on mute still, Jean, on Zoom. Not on your phone, on your computer. I'm gonna see if I can unmute you.
All right. Hi.
There you
Okay.
are.
Thank you. I was trying to make sure I could. I had my backup in case this started getting interrupted. But you can hear me clearly. Awesome. So yeah, thank you so much for that, Augustus, for sharing a lot of your knowledge and then just explaining how the three branches of government work. Yeah, so my name is Jean and I work with the LA County Registrar Recorder. What I do specifically, I'm in the community and voter outreach section. So normally when there isn't a pandemic taking place, I'm out there in the field at family, public events, engaging with the public and registering people to vote and assisting them with any questions that they have related to elections. And we are doing presentations with community-based organizations or town hall meetings, and just explaining to you everything that's going on, everything new that the LA County is doing. And so even last year and this year, we were very focused on just talking about the new voting system and how that would be out for the primary election. So I trust that the majority of you got to experience it for the first time during the primary elections. And if you didn't, maybe you'll see it this time around for the general election. So yeah, we have a new voting system. And along with that, we do have also the 11 days of voting. So it was just like really, it was past due that we needed to accommodate such a large number of voters because after all, we are the largest voting jurisdiction in the entire US. The LA County has the largest number of voters registered. So it was just about time we needed to accommodate everybody who was registered. And, also to avoid Carmageddon on election day, right? So yeah, but let me know, Dana, should I go ahead and start the presentation?
Yes, would you just, I know you mentioned we have a new voting system. For those who may not be aware of that, could you explain what that is, the new system?
Yeah, the ballot marking device. I actually do have it in my presentation, I believe, but I
Okay.
can of course definitely. Do you want me to go into it now or during the presentation?
Let's do your presentation then.
Awesome, awesome. And then of course we'll take more questions when during that. Oh, okay. Oh wait. Let me just get back to this and put it in.
And if, for those of you who are watching, if you have any questions, you can throw your questions up in the chat at any time, and we'll keep monitoring that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. All right. Okay, so to just begin the title of my presentation, the voting in a pandemic. What's going on right now? So voting in a pandemic time, I know that everybody is still kind of unsure and what's going on, what the LA County is doing about the elections for the general, and because of COVID, so people are probably wondering, oh, okay, so we're all getting vote by mail, so that means we can't vote in person, but that's not true. We actually do have vote centers available for you to still vote in person. And of course, we are following safe plans, the CDC guidelines, to make sure that everybody is safe, and we are disinfecting all equipment to make sure that after each user that the next user is safe, and we have sanitized everything. But yes, so let me continue. Maybe I should move this over. Okay, so for the November general election snapshot, as I mentioned, we are the largest voting jurisdiction in the county. Out of 10.2 million people within just the LA County, which is like 4.1 square miles large, it's just we have 10.1 million people population, 6.1 who are eligible to register to vote, but only 5.6 are actually registered to vote. And then the outcome of how voters for like the primary elections, it was only about 38%. So the number is even lower. Not all 5.6 people are actually voting, right? So we really are trying to kick that number up. So for, as I said, and of course, as you may already know, is that everybody is receiving a vote by mail ballot, right? Whether you requested it or not, you are receiving it if you are registered with the LA County. Again, we are going to, for the vote centers, you have that option to vote in person, and we are strictly following state and county guidelines to make sure that you, the voters, are safe, and us, the election workers, are safe as well. We, along with being able to vote in person, of course, we have 10 days of early voting. So the first day of voting begins October 24th all the way to November 3rd. So with November 3rd included, that would mean 11 days. But I'm kind of lying because the actual first day of voting was October 5th, because as you know, a registrar recorder is usually open a month prior to election day to allow voters to vote early there. But that only takes place at Norwalk Registrar Recorder. So sometimes people are not aware of this because you're probably in a part of the county that's not very ideal for you to come and vote all the way there. But sometimes it may be because if you live in, for instance, in Lancaster, you would consider voting at Norwalk. early and that on October 5th, because by the time that you need to election day Tuesday comes around, you're probably out of town because that's just how your job is. So sometimes people have that option, right? And along with the 10 days, so it's just more options to be able to vote in person, right? The LA County is looking all about accessibility for all the voters that we have registered here in the county. All right. Normally, we have about only, for example, during the primaries, we only had about 206 drop boxes. But because everybody is receiving the vote by mail ballots, we have double that number. So you might, for instance, have already seen a drop box, just as the image is showing, driving down the street anywhere by a county or city facility like a library, city hall, a school, for instance, high school, elementary, college. You might have already seen one because we doubled the number of these drop boxes for you voters. And just to kind of put you at ease, this is the drop boxes are actually collected by our staff every 24 hours. So they are available and open for you to drop your ballot off at any time. It could be midnight, and we would be picking it up like every 24 hours. All right, so the 10-day locations, let me see. The 10-day locations are 75 locations approximately, 20 in Supervisorial District 1, 2, and 15 in Sup District 5, 10 in Sup District 3 and 4, and the hours are 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. daily. And the reason we pushed down the hours is because we wanted to still allow people who traditionally work 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. hours, and give them that opportunity to go and vote after work if they decide not to go during lunch and so on, right? Through election day, but November 2nd, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. That never changes. It is always election day Tuesday hours, 7 a.m., 8 p.m. 5-day locations. The target is 800 locations approximately. They are geographically balanced and distributed within each Sup district so that everybody has about an even amount of vote centers in their Sup district. And again, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Are the hours. The only day that we have different hours is always the 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. All right, so as I said earlier, the drop-off boxes for the vote by mail, they will look like this, what you see on the screen. So when you're ready, just make sure that you can insert, that you drop it off into one of these official ballot drop boxes, which are emptied every 24 hours by our LA County staff. And just make sure that when you do submit it, when you are ready to submit, that you make sure that you are signing the official envelope. Sorry. Make sure that you are signing. Is that message to me?
I can see them. You don't have to worry.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm just making sure everybody can hear me. Thank you.
No, they're just throwing questions in the chat. We'll grab them.
Okay. Thank you, Dana. All right. So yeah, make sure that when you are ready to submit your official ballot, your vote by mail ballot, that you are signing and dating it the day that you drop it off in the box. Do not forget to sign it, whatever you do. If you are turning it in for, say, your cousin, your family member, sibling, and make sure that you are the one putting the second signature, because we want to make sure that if somebody entrusted you to drop off their vote by mail ballot, that your signature is also there along with theirs, right? In the box that says, did somebody turn this in for you? Make sure that you are putting it in the security seal, the securely sealed the official return envelope. That's what I mean. Don't forget to sign and date. All right, so the drop boxes you might have seen the drop boxes were already out throughout the county, set up before October 5th, but October 5th was the first day that we opened them and allowed for you, the voters, to begin dropping off your vote by mail ballot boxes, ballots at the boxes. So all the way through October 5th to November 3rd. And make sure you return your ballot early. That way you can just get it done with, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. So encouraging early voting and dropping off your vote by mail ballot off early. All right, you can track your vote by mail ballot. I think this is really fun, right? Because it's like sometimes people get after you vote, people want to know like, how do I know if I voted or not? Like, well, you voted first of all, but people kind of want to see a list of all the elections that they voted in. They just kind of like following that, and of course you can get a record of all the elections that you have participated in, that you have voted in, by coming to the registrar recorder and requesting that information. So this is how you gather that a lot of campaigns will know that you participate in the elections quite frequently. So that's why if you get phone calls a lot, they're like, hey, you're a voter, so we kind of want to get your vote. And that's how they know, because the registrar recorder has the record of how much you vote, how often you vote. So anyway, I digress. But you can track your ballot at california.ballottracks.net. After you have casted your vote by mail, you can sign up, subscribe on this website, and you can follow your vote by mail. I highly encourage it. And if you're worried about writing all this information down, just remember that everything is available on lavote.net, lavote.net, voting and elections, and you will see all the information here that I am providing to you. All right, so ballot marking device. Dana was asking about this. Our ballot marking device is our new voting system that we finally came up with and began to use for the primary elections. So a lot of you might not have seen this because you're like, oh, well, I'm an absentee voter, so there's no need for me to use this. But maybe you might be curious and you realize, oh, there's early voting. Maybe I will surrender my vote by mail ballot and decide to vote in person. So if you do, you would treat it almost just like the Inca vote, right? You still need to go into a vote center. You need to check in with an election worker, give us your name, and we would issue you a paper ballot. So you are looking at a tablet on this device, but we still have a paper ballot. There was no way that we can get the ballot marking device certified unless we had a paper ballot. So again, you would check in and we would issue your paper ballot. You would approach the device and follow the prompts on the screen. It's very straightforward, and it has about 13 languages available along with audio if you needed it. And yes, so one thing we also did is that we now have an integrated ballot box with the device. You no longer are, after you're done with the voting, you no longer are taking your ballot and looking to cast it into a separate ballot box. The device has a built-in ballot box. So as soon as you're done making your choices, you will review and then you will click print. The ballot will come out with everything. And the great thing about it is that now you will be able to read all your selections instead of looking at like 300 bubbles. So you would actually be able to read all the candidates, the measures, and the choices that you made, all of your selections. You will be able to verify that second time. And if everything looks good, you would let it go, submit it back into the device, and it would say, cast my ballot, and you say cast my ballot, and that's how you would finally vote. So just remember, there's a paper ballot and you're casting it on the same device.
Jean, I want to interrupt you and just get in a couple of questions in the chat. I'm seeing people sharing that they've been hearing in the news that there are some of the voting boxes that are fake and are not sanctioned by LA County. How are they to know which voting boxes are legit and which are not?
Okay, so I'm not sure about the whole fake boxes, but if of course there is a high concern, they should have the county logos and the phone numbers and our website. It should look exactly like this pretty much. And if you wanted to be sure, like let's just say you suspect that there's a box that isn't actually legitimate, you would it should look like this. It has California Elections Code and so on. definitely tampering with the the ballot box is a felony. So, but yeah, so if you suspect that it's not an actual ballot box, then I would encourage you to let us know and call us. The phone number is, you can call the number that is provided on our website, lavote.net, and you would report that. But the ballot box looks like this. So if you have your smartphone and you're suspecting that one of the boxes isn't legitimate, you could compare the photograph that we have on our website to what you're looking at. And if you still feel like it's not necessarily accurate and you suspect it, then you would call it in.
Okay, very good. One more question, and then we'll wrap up and make sure that we get to the rest of our panelists. I see a question in here about, so are you saying we can vote in person before the election day, not the drop box? And how do we find locations where we can vote in person before election day?
Okay, so yes, I'm saying you can vote before Election Day Tuesday because you can vote already tomorrow at LA County, the Registrar Recorder in Norwalk on 12400 Imperial Highway, Norwalk. So you can already vote there 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Beginning October 24th, we will have several other vote centers also available throughout the county where you can also vote. Those hours, aside from the Registrar Recorder, will be 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. So, and the list of the locations available are available on our website, lavote.net. You would go to voting and elections, and then you would click on find a vote center near me. And then you can click either the city or a zip code, and it will give you like 5 approximate locations near you.
Okay, that's fantastic, Jean. I took like a ton of questions that I definitely want to ask you more when we get to the Q&A. So I do want to keep us moving so we can get to our next 2 panelists. If you continue to have questions, if you have more questions for Jean, I do. I want to know, what do people do if they haven't gotten their ballot yet? I think it's important what you said about the second signature on the ballot. If you are turning in a ballot for a family member, not only do they need to sign it, but you also need to sign it as well. That's key. So we will get back to that when we have the Q&A. So next, let's move on to Kelvin Driscoll, who is going to give us some ideas on how to get through the voter's guide. Kelvin, I have all kinds of things that have come in the mail here. I have vote locations. I have 4 things here, and I have all of this. So please help us with the voting guide.
Sure. All right, so.
Yeah, you can stop sharing your screen, Jean. Thank you.
All right, so at this point, your mailboxes are going to be flooded with campaign mail. You'll be getting mail from the state. As Jean mentioned, you'll be getting some mail from the Registrar Recorder about voting locations. And then you will also get what is either referred to as a voter guide or a sample ballot. And so I think you all can make your determinations about how helpful you think campaign mail is that comes from candidates. I can tell you personally, as a candidate, that mail is paid for either by the candidate or an organization or a person on behalf of the candidate. And so all of that messaging is very specific to the candidates that you're receiving mail for. The state will send you a voter's guide. And my wife and I, when we voted, we already voted. When we voted, utilized two resources, 3 maybe. We used the state's voter guide, which is going to talk to you about the propositions that you're going to see on your ballot. And just to be clear, you might have, well, you're certainly going to have some statewide propositions. I think this cycle they started either 13 or 14, and I think they go all the way to 22, 23. Those are state propositions. And then depending on your local municipality, your county, I've seen a pop-up in the chat, Orange County, LA County, San Bernardino County, Riverside County, depending on what county you're in, you could have local county measures that will appear on your ballot. And then If you go down to another level of municipality, your city, you could have local city measures that are on your ballot. And then the races start to differ from there. Some of you will be voting on school board members. You could be voting on community college districts. Certainly you could be voting on members for the state assembly or senate, or you could be voting on local school board races, I think I said. But the ballots start to differ as you get, I guess, to different levels of municipalities, all the way down from the state to the county to the city. And so your sample ballot or your voter guide is what is put out by your county. And LA County will send you what is called a sample ballot. I think mine's on the counter somewhere. Dan, you might have something that you can show. That is your ballot. And then if you have like a little book, it'll say sample ballot on it. It looks like it's a big book almost. Let's see that one. That's your state voter guide. So that's going to talk to you about your propositions. Just write propositions on there. And then what else you got on the table next to you? Looks like that's your mail from the LA County talking about how you can vote. I'll grab my voter guide for you in a second. And I know it's a bunch of stuff. In your voter guide, there are a couple of things that I think are important for you to pay attention to. There will be statements from local candidates. And so it's important for you to know that candidates are able to provide a statement to voters. Usually it's somewhere between 200 and 300 words. Oftentimes they can also include a Spanish translation in those guides. And again, it's important for you to know that those are statements that candidates themselves are paying for. So you have a little bit of extra information about the candidate. And then in there, you will also see copies of the ballot and what the ballot might look like when you're voting. So to my point that I raised earlier, my wife and I, we used the state voter guide that you saw Dana hold up. And the way that you'll be able to tell that it's a state voter guide is it'll often have something that says California at the top of it, and it'll include pretty extensive write-ups on those propositions. And then when you do your state, thanks. All right, here is your LA County. Can you guys see that? My wife just handed it to me. Thanks, babe. So this is your official sample ballot. This is what you will always receive from LA County. And depending on what county you're in, it'll say like LA County, it'll say Orange County. I think LA County's ballots, when you receive your ballots, are gray. That was a gray seal that Dana was holding up. And I think Orange Counties are actually orange. You may see an orange seal on that. So we use our county guide and we use our state guide. County will help us to do everything at our county and city level, and our state guide will help us to do everything concerning the state propositions. Did I cover everything, Dana?
No, I think that's excellent. I think sometimes it's overwhelming, the volume of paper that you get and the robocalls. So this is super helpful that we can.
I could say one more thing. I think this is just kind of a trick that we use. Sometimes you still won't even know. You can look at the state propositions or the state voter guide. You can look at what's in your sample ballot. You still kind of don't know, like I don't really know which way to go based on what they're telling me. So the last trick that we kind of use in our house is we will go visit the websites of the propositions. So let's just take 15, for example, and that is I'm just picking on that proposition for a second. Usually we'll Google yes on 15 and see whose website is yes on 15. We'll look at who's endorsing yes on 15. We'll look at major funders of 15, and then we'll Google no on 15 and see whose website comes up for no on 15 and who are major funders and who are major endorsers. Because sometimes you can find alliance, right? Like if these people are allies or I trust them as validators of a campaign, then, for example, a person says, yes, I'm endorsing this, then that might help to kind of give you some peace about, okay, this seems to be kind of a safe proposition. So that's the last thing that we do. And then the last thing I guess I'll say is, LA County is actually engaged in a pilot right now at the Register Recorder's Office, where they are putting your local races first. What we call is undervoting sometimes happen when you see the more high profile races. So like your presidential campaign or your congressional campaign, believe it or not, most people will vote in those races and then they undervote in the races that are left over because they just either don't really know a lot about those candidates or they just choose not to vote. So in LA County specifically, and remember, this happens county, we do elections county by county. So all those registrars in every county, there are 58 of them in the state, they are running their own elections. But in LA County specifically, we're running a pilot where your local races appear first on your ballot. So for my wife and I, our city council was the first race that we seen on our ballot when we voted. It's followed by your community college districts or your school boards. And so that is really important to know because it really is important that we are engaged at the local level. And for my wife and I, so much so that by the time we got to the end of the ballot, we had almost forgot to vote for president. So it just goes to show that there is a psychology of you just get kind of fatigued on that ballot. There's a lot of races that you're thinking about. There's a lot you have to go through, but you want to make sure you don't undervote. Vote your entire ballot. And if you're in LA County, you're going to see some of those local races first. So your county official sample ballot can be a really useful tool to help you understand who the heck are some of these people on this ballot that I've never heard about.
No, I think that's so useful. I was just looking at the chat and some people were saying, yeah, some things we have to do our own research. Absolutely. I heard some people sharing that they sometimes turn to YouTube where they're getting information about propositions. I know for me, I have a family member who is all things politics. And so I just carve out time with him before election day. And I was like, okay, take me through these propositions because I just don't want to click a box or not click a box. At least that's my last resort is to go to him. And I trust his judgment to decide how we vote on it.
Yeah, some of those validators. It's the same thing that we're talking about. You can find validators. One of the things that we've heard from just constituents and individuals on the campaign trail is that they're hosting Zoom parties with friends and family to kind of really sit down and talk about the ballot. One of your earlier intro questions was about making a plan to vote, which is so important. And a part of that plan can be like family and friends kind of Zooming together on a Sunday, take out your sample guides and just kind of talk through some of what you're seeing, or maybe break up some of the propositions for people to do a little bit digging and then come back as a group and talk about it.
I love it. That's great. Thank you so much, Kelvin. It's great idea. Most importantly, having a plan and not arriving at the drop box and having not filled out that ballot, but having done that and thought it through before you get there.
And you can vote now. I would say that's the last thing to say.
Yeah.
You can vote now. You don't have to wait. If you have your ballot, you can vote now. You can turn it in. Gene, gave you all the list, but we've already turned ours in. You can vote now.
You can vote now. And if there's ever last resort, it is Norwalk, because I was watching the news today and some people are waiting in line, 8-10 hours. I'm like, well, you could drive to Norwalk in 2 and get back home. So that's got to be better than waiting in line for 10. All right. Thank you so much, Kelvin. And then Doc Josh, if you want to, take us home for maybe about 5 minutes, and then we'll have 5 minutes for Q&A.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be brief because I do want to leave people time to ask questions. I know there's a lot. I just want to give a couple words of encouragement. First of all, congratulations for even being on the call. Congratulations for being voters. I mean, I want to read a quote from James Baldwin that I think is apropos. He says, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." And so when you engage in the voting process, you're facing the problem. I mean, apathy is an enemy. It really is. And, voting isn't just a right or a privilege. It is a responsibility. The framers of our Constitution entrusted us with the responsibility to make these choices. And when things don't happen, sometimes they don't happen because we don't participate. So be encouraged that you have the opportunity. Our government isn't perfect, but no governmental system is perfect. They all have flaws. They all look one way on paper and look another way in practice. However, we engage with the full on as we become voters And we deal with the kind of one of the first two lines of our Constitution, and that is to become a more perfect union. We got a ways to go, and we can contribute to that. I also want to say, just in terms of just being comforted, you know, the person with the most powerful state affects the room. And attitude is actually contagious. Apathy is contagious. You know, negative emotions, they're contagious. In fact, they've done, I don't know if you've ever read a book called Social Intelligence. It talks about how they've done studies where they put someone in a room. I don't know how they find this angry person. They put them in the room, I don't know how they find a sad person. They put them in a room and they find people with a neutral state, and they don't let them talk to each other, and they have to record what their state is before they get in the room. And then afterwards, what they find is that the person who's angry or the person who's sad is actually causing the other people in the room to change their state. Well, what happens if you're excited? What happens if you're hopeful? What happens if you're determined? Could that have an impact on our dynamic? So I just want to encourage you with that your attitude as you vote, believing that you can make a difference. We don't know what the future holds, but we know we can take hold of the moment. It could actually change the history of this country. And last but not least, of course, have peace. Our job is to do our part, and then God's job is to do his part. We're not responsible for solving every problem. We're just responsible for engaging with what we can do, and then really trusting God with the rest and letting him do his thing. So be encouraged. Thanks for being on the call. And I just want to hand it back to Dana for any questions that we'd like to answer.
Thank you so much, Doc Josh. Well, we kind of went through the majority of our questions in the chat. I'll take a couple of more before we close out. Some ballots are blank on one side. What do we do with those particular ballots? It seems that there's no way that we can vote with these ballots. What's that about? Jean, are you all familiar with that?
Yes, I was actually just asking. So I'm not sure which kind of ballots she's referring to. If it's vote by mail, I'm not sure. It could depend on the district, because some people who are in different local districts might have, for example, some people have LAUSD measures, and like Long Beach doesn't have that. So I'm not sure what exactly it's vote by mail. Yeah. It's possible, but if you know for certain that they are missing pages, or maybe it was printed in error, then I linked a message here for them to request a replacement vote by mail ballot if you believe that it is printed in error.
Okay. A question I'm hearing a lot is, what if you have not received your ballot yet? Are they still being mailed, or should people be concerned if they have not received them yet?
Yes. So we do have a plan that we made with the post office to have them kind of just do a bulk per day. So there is people are still receiving their vote by mail ballots. And if, let's just say, you're kind of getting anxious, feel free to call the number that I put here in the chat about a vote by mail.
Okay. And this is a question for anyone on the panel. What about those folks who want to do more? They want to do more than vote. Is it, can they still volunteer? Can they be a poll worker? Anyone who'd like to respond?
You know what? I do want to encourage it that it's not necessarily my section, and I can't stand when people say that, because you're like, well, you're in the county anyway. But I would still encourage you to apply no matter what, because even if there is a deadline, we still rely on people who we have waitlisted. Because, for instance, let's just say we hypothetically reached the maximum that we needed. There are still cancellations, emergencies that come up, and people don't show up. It happens. And before we know it, we are short staffed at a vote center. So I would still apply if I were you. I encourage it. If we don't get around to you for this election, then hopefully the future elections. But after
and
this.
That's a poll monitor, correct, Jean? You're talking about being a poll monitor? Got it.
Yeah, the election worker.
Yep.
But aside from, let's just say that you don't get a chance to assist with at the vote center, just let people know to vote early. I love what Dana said, that it's like, if you find one that has a long line, which I doubt will happen, go to the registrar recorder. You know, we're just be safe, take care of yourself, and plan ahead. Make a plan. I love what Joshua, I believe, was the one sharing or talking about the Zoom parties. Like, if you're not sure and you're just like, that person sometimes gets a little nervous and says, you know what, I'm just gonna let it land, whatever prop. Just do your Zoom party. Plan ahead. Make a plan with you and your friends so that all of you can get it done together. And
Hey, Danny, can I just layer on top of that as well, too? I think you can always make sure that you're reaching out to your circle of influence, and you're really encouraging them to vote. You know, I can tell you from, the very beginning when I heard this whole idea of making a plan to vote, I was like, what is that? Like, I don't, I'm just going to vote. Like, what do I need to make a plan for?
Right.
But when you really understand how voting, Gene said it, how voting is different in a pandemic, you really do want to think about how it is that you cast your ballot. Will you be mailing it in? Will you be walking it in? How will you handle anxieties you may have around your ballot? And then it's just always good to check in with others, because chances are your friends and your families are having some of the same questions that you have, or they're experiencing some of the same anxieties that you're experiencing. And so that too is a part of making a plan to vote and reaching out to your circle and encouraging everyone to be engaged. I mean, this is not one of those moments, no matter what you believe, where anyone should be sitting out. And as Augustus outlined earlier, that vote has come at a high price.
Yeah.
And there are certainly forces out there that would like to depress the vote. And so don't let that happen. Make a plan and vote and encourage others.
I'd like to add just one last thing to kind of reiterate. This is a participatory democracy, a system that works because people are working in it. They're participating with it. They're being a part of it. And the poll workers are really important. If you want to do something and you have the time and you like being around people, even if you don't like being around people, they can put you in something that you at least be a participant in helping out. But it's a wonderful thing. My wife and I have done it at 2 or 3 elections. You get to meet people. You get to help folks out. Some folks don't understand what they're supposed to do. You get to be able to be a part of that. And so I encourage people, that it is participatory. And there's one thing that you can do. You can always be a poll worker unless there's something wrong with you, okay? But you don't have a problem. It's not that hard to do. It's not that difficult. You don't need to be a scientist or something like that. And you need it, okay? End of discussion.
Yep. And Doc Josh, did you want to add one last thing? I thought I saw your hand. You're on mute.
No, I didn't. I think I said in my piece. Really, you should be encouraged that you even have the privilege to participate in this. I know we have complaints about our democracy. I know you can't travel the world right now in the pandemic, but you should think about other places in the world who do not have this privilege, who really do have elections that are suspect. I know we talk about it, but we are far from that in many ways, even though we have flaws. So be encouraged and take advantage of this privilege that we have to vote.
And on that note, we're going to close out. We thank you all for coming out at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night. 3 weeks to go. Don't forget to vote. If you haven't already, put your plan together. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Thank you.